Welcome to the Indian Newslink podcast series Coffee with Kamil by Kamil Lakshman.
There's a dinner to go to. There's very important meetings. I'm meeting a friend for coffee. And many, many things are going to happen next week. So I wake up early in the morning. I get dressed and go to work. And I have my first meeting. The person I'm meeting with seems fine. Problems are told. And solutions are found. But I detect a sense of something, as if the person doesn't really like me. So I start feeling very uncomfortable. Then I'm meeting a friend for lunch, and I have a very lovely lunch with her. Everything's fine. Then in the afternoon, I'm walking on the street, and I come across somebody that I know. And I pause for a while so that I could talk to her, but she just walks away. I start feeling not very nice inside. I feel as if I've just been rejected. Why does she not talk to me? Why does she not stop? And so my mind starts playing a game. It starts playing a game of theories. You could call it conspiracy theories of why does she not stop to talk to me? Does she not like me? Is she angry with me? What is it? And then I start thinking about that meeting I had in the morning. What was it? What was it? That person also didn't like me and didn't, that's why I picked this up, the sense of something that was not comfortable. And we do this all the time, at some point or the other. Sometimes we're aware of it, and other times we're not. And it upsets us. It spoils our day. We tend to think about it. Sometimes we even talk about it to other people. Analyze it. Analyze people's intention, because we have taken it as a fact. They must have meant to do that. That's why I feel like this. And what is it that you feel? Well, that's also very difficult to describe, because sometimes it's an empty feeling. It's a sense that you are not appreciated, you're not liked, you are not acknowledged, you're rejected, you feel abandoned. Many, many reasons that tend to be of a negative nature. But you start telling yourself the story of you're not good enough. The same kind of messaging comes. And so what is it in us that is giving us that kind of messaging? What is it that makes us feel like that? Is it our intellect? Well, no, there's something called the emotional body. That particular body, the emotional body, seems to create havoc for us in our lives. We could be intellectually sound. We could be doing really well, but all it takes is a look from somebody or a comment from somebody in a party, just a passing comment, or someone did not acknowledge you, or even somebody didn't invite you somewhere which you expected to be invited to. All kinds of reasons. And it's particularly bad, the ones that happen when you're young. Somebody said something to you and it really hurt you. You don't know why they said it, because you're very young, you're very innocent, and things hurt. But what is it that's hurting? It is this emotional body that gets affected, that we don't seem to really understand, or we don't even acknowledge it exists. We don't realize that it seems to have its own reign, its own kingdom, its own way of operation, its own rules, its own regulation. And we, as individuals that are subject to it, that have to live in its kingdom, are completely puppets to it, unless we recognize that there's such a thing. And if we recognize there's such a thing, start observing. Start how it really plays with you, this emotion. And it almost seems that you can't control it. It just has, one day you just feel terrible. Just feel terrible. And sometimes you don't know, you sort of know the link, how it started, but you don't know what to do about it. And that leads to unhappiness. It leads to a sense of, I don't want to use the word depression, but it's that pathway. It sort of makes you feel bad about yourself. And I keep using this word, not good enough, because that's how it makes you feel. It makes you feel inferior. It makes you feel some kind of, that you're not up to a certain standard. And it's really complex because it's so intangible and you can't really point a finger to it, but it affects you so badly. It can be totally consuming, all consuming. I know for a fact that someone I know, somebody said something to them when they were very, very young. And that has affected that person throughout their entire life. That story became bigger and bigger and bigger as life went by. And all her decision-making was factored by the story. And it seemed as if she was consumed by it. It completely ruled her. Now all of us have a story. And all of us have that story that dictates our decisions in our lives. Find that story because it's running havoc in your lives. Find that story. If you have found the story, you have been able to work through it, and you've sought help, or you've used techniques and tools that you have learned and have overcome it, then you have really conquered something big. Yet, when you look at whatever it is, the story, what's very interesting about it is actually it's insignificant. It's something small. Somebody said, somebody did to you, but you have given it importance. You have given it the ammunition, the energy to make it that big and impact your life in the way it does and affect you in the way it does. You have done it, not the other person. The other person may not even know. It may not even have been their intention. Sometimes that's how it is. Other times they are malicious in their approach. They are well-intended sometimes, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes you're right to think the story you have thought of the why. But really, does that matter? The why? No, it doesn't. Because, they're doing things, going their merry way, living their life, unaffected by this 2 seconds or whatever happened. But you have carried it. And you have made it bigger. And it has affected your life. And it has made you do things in a way where you don't have freedom because you're dictated by this particular story that you've been carrying in your head, in your mind, which has dictated everything else. So it's really, really powerful, even though it may be so small and insignificant in size. But in terms of impact, it's huge. So let's think about it. Let's think about these stories that we tell ourselves, that we are constantly telling ourselves in one form or the other. Sometimes it has no impact. Sometimes it's just a fleeting moment where something's happened, you've reacted in a particular way, and it has not really impacted on your life. But there are other times where it has had huge consequences. You have had the reaction and you've been affected in a particular way, which people around you tell you. People around you say, oh, why are you like this? Why are you like that? And they say that because they see something that is not quite the norm. The defensive reaction, the sense of inadequacy, or not being able to take a joke, or not being able to respond appropriately, and amplifying it and making it really big. Therefore, it's a reaction that you have because you have no control. You have no freedom from it. So you're completely dictated by it. Therefore, it's very, very important in a way that we are mindful that when these things impact us, that we understand that there is this emotional body which dictates, which is not tangible, but we feel it. This is what it's all about, the feeling. The feeling that you don't understand why you have that particular feeling. It seems to have its own way of operating, its own rules and regulations. And if we can tap into it and understand it, then great, you've got the freedom from that story and from that reaction. You become the ruler instead of being ruled. Let's try and understand this emotional body, and let's try and acknowledge that it exists, because it will help with whatever it is that is causing grief in our lives. And it may provide a way out to a life of a much happier life, a much contented life, a much more free life. And also, it will allow us not to get and fall into traps where the emotions hijack everything. And it hijacks, not only does it hijack, but it dictates our future decisions, our decisions about what we do in life. Sometimes we don't want to go somewhere. Sometimes we don't want to do something because of how we feel. So, for example, if we feel that if we go to that party and that negative energy will impact us, so we don't go. We don't want to go. We don't want to associate with people. But imagine a stage where you acknowledge that you may feel like that, but you have the ability and the willpower to overcome it and not allow it to touch you. Imagine that position of strength. So let's hope we can get to that position and get there.
Thank you for listening to the Indian Newslink podcast series Coffee with Kamil by Kamil Lakshman.